I think so.
Let's do
Okay.
it.
I'm gonna have the way this will work just for everyone. We'll do this a little kickoff here. We'll talk about kind of what we launched last week. We'll talk about Pinecone and n8n. And then I'll bring both Maddie and Aemal back on and we'll talk to each of you individually, but to learn a little bit more about both of you and what you have been working on, get some reactions to what we have been talking about. And then we'll do audience Q&A towards the end.
Um,
So if you have questions now, like as we get going, for everyone out there, if you have questions, please drop them in the Zoom Q&A, um, which I can now see. Drop them in the Zoom Q&A, and yeah, that way we'll make sure we don't lose them.
And we'll
um,
potentially answer them as we go along. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we if it makes sense to answer something now, we'll answer it now. Um, okay, we're gonna talk about that. Uh, I'm just looking at Makej. I don't remember how to say your name. Um, that question already. Okay. Maddie and Amal, have you kind of just like turn your video off and we'll get going. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Jenna. I am a developer advocate at Pinecone, and I am here with Roie, aka Community Pinecone. Do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Roy Schwaber-Cohen, and I run DevRel here at Pinecone.
Yay. Thank you. Okay, so the way I kind of went through this earlier, but like we're gonna talk about what we just launched. We'll talk a little bit about Pinecone, Pinecone Assistant, n8n, and how kind of they fit together. Uh, we'll talk with our two guests and then do Q&A. This thing that we are here to talk about today, Roy, is this new we've built this node for n8n, and it wraps around one of our products called Pinecone Assistant or Assistant. And the reason we did this is to help people connect their n8n workflows to um, a more accurate AI search and to be able to bring more authentic or authoritative data from potentially your company's data sources, your maybe something that is changing rapidly and is not in our LLMs yet. So to be able to bring that authoritative data into your workflows, and this could be whether this is chat, this could be some sort of search, it could be some sort of recommendations. And so that's kind of the like how we got to this point. But do you want to talk a little bit about Pinecone Assistant as it like itself? Maybe
Yeah,
kind of like what we were talking about yesterday, I think is an interesting starting point.
yeah, for sure. Like, I think that, since LLMs kind of became kind of like a huge thing a couple of years ago, people have already like immediately saw, right? Like there's this like curse of uh, that cutoff date, right? Like there's stuff that the LLM model just didn't know about. And beyond that, like we know that like LLMs lie very confidently, right? They just tell you things like with this immense confidence and they don't necessarily ground it in anything real. And even if they are correct, which is the worst part of it, right? There's really no way of knowing, right? For sure, right? That what they're saying is actually a fact or not, or that their authority is somehow goes beyond, right? Like what the content that they were trained on, right? So like you got this like same entity, the LLM, kind of giving you both lies and truths, and you sort of have to trust everything the same way, right? So what you end up is if you identify a lie, suddenly the truths become kind of, questionable, right? And so the solution to that that was pretty evident to Pinecone And truthfully, on like other plays in the space, is that you have to ground the LLM's responses in information that you trust. And since the way that we communicate with LLMs is natural language, you need some uh, mechanism that would allow you to still communicate in natural language, but sort of bridge that gap between structured data and data that you trust and authoritative data and the capability of the LLM. And that's what when RAG came along, right? It basically, the paradigm basically says, give the LLM some additional content that you can trust and plop it into its context window and then produce a result, right, that is based on that trusted content. And the big question is like, okay, so how do I even get to that content? And the solution to that is you take the user's query very naively, right? Like you take the user's query, you look at the actual meaning of what the user is saying. You go beyond the surface form, right? And you use for this particular purpose, you use a vector database to get at similar content to the one that the user asked for, and that's going to have the highest probability of being relevant, right, for any particular query. Now, this whole situation, right, required a lot of work. So you had to like think about how do you create embeddings, which are like the mathematical representation of the meaning of the words. How do you chunk your text, right, such that like the pieces of text that are found by the vector database are small enough to, not have a lot of noise, but big enough to be relevant and not cut off a lot of the information. So like there are a lot of challenges around there. Once you get results back from the database, are they all the same in importance, or do we have to re-rank them in some way, right? So that they become so we can basically take the ones that are relevant to the user's question. Do we even look at the user's query like, at face value? Do we have to like break it apart, rejigger it, break it, do something to it so that like we get better results, right? All of these questions have led, a lot of people to solve this problem of the RAG pipeline again and again and again and again and again and again. And of course, like a lot of people who have been using Pinecone and N8n, we've seen this like very clearly, have tried to solve this particular question and have solved it in, ways that work for them, right? And for their particular use case. And what Pinecone decided was basically to say, hey, what if we stop treating this, RAG problem as a pipeline and instead thought of it as essentially a primitive, right? Like, so this retrieval question, right? Like as a user, I don't care about everything that goes into it, right? Like I don't want to think about chunking. I don't want to think about embedding. I don't want to think about re-ranking. I don't want to think about query optimization or how everything gets executed and put together and scaled, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to give the system my documents and get back an interface that allows me to do RAG easily, right? To basically take those context snippets and put them back into my LLM. And that's exactly what Assistant does, right? It basically packages all of that process in a very, very easy to use primitive that now becomes
Mhm.
our building block for doing more complicated and interesting things.
Yeah. I think one of our biggest questions that we get from the community um has been like, how do I choose a chunking strategy? And I think the next biggest one that I've seen like in the N8N community is um I'm looking for the specific keyword and using the Pinecone vector database with semantic search. And that's not what semantic search does. And so that I hope that like what we have built will help solve some of those challenges that I know a lot of people are experiencing. It has helped me, I will say that. And some of the I hope the people that we're going to talk to today are going to say the same thing. Um, so as we're going through this and talking through this, and as I show you, I would love to kind of like, please feel free to like keep chatting in the chat and talk about like if you've used the vector data, the Pinecone vector store node, or you've used our database directly outside of N8N, please let us know like some things that have been challenging for you because that could potentially be input into new features on either side of the database or the node that could help us help you in the long run, whether it's with either product. So, um, do we want to see this in action? Like, does
Yeah, I
that make
think
sense?
so. Yeah,
Okay.
I totally, I really think so. And I'm very excited when you see this really happening. I think I would really challenge our audience to think about what they'll make with it, right? And we really want to see
Yeah.
like the workflows that you're gonna create. I've been really inspired by like again the existing workflows on 8n. Generally, N8n is an amazing tool. I think it's really cool. But like the things that I've seen people build, both with our vector store node and the assistant node, are really are interesting, and we'd be happy to feature them in our blog if you're interested in building them. And we're also planning some. We have some other plans. Maybe we'll talk about them later for people who want to build these kind of workflows. But yeah, take it away, Jenna.
Yeah. Um, One thing I did forget to mention at the beginning of this that I have in my notes, I have highlighted in yellow. We're actually doing, we're running a like a special pricing promotion for all of this. We really do want, like, we'd love for you to try out this new node, and in as you do that, like, give us this feedback if you can, if you have feedback. I will drop a link in the chat to more information about that in a little bit, but I kind of just wanted to mention that as I walk through, you're going to see some of that as I walk through kind of getting this set up. Um, so the first thing that you have to do is install this node. This is it's a community node that we built. And it has gone through the N8N verification process. So you can see here, everybody can see my screen, I assume. And you can see here, Pinecone Assistant. I'm just searching for the word Pinecone, so I can see both of them showing up. The vector store node, our Pinecone Assistant node. We can see this little check mark. This says it's been vetted by N8N. I've already installed it in my N8N instance here, but you would see a little install button. You'd go and install it, and then you'd have access to these different operations. So let's take a look at this is kind of I've got this very let's do this here. This is a very common use case that we are seeing that I have been seeing people implementing with the vector store node, Pinecone vector store node. It's very common with how people are using Assistant today outside of N8N. And so that was kind of the first thing that I wanted to show off. And so I built this workflow. What this does is it is essentially a chat with your docs workflow. The triggers are based off of Google Drive. So if you add a new or update a file in Google Drive, it will upload it to Assistant using the Assistant node. And then once all your data is in Assistant, you can actually chat with it using. I just in here in this workflow, I'm just using just the chat node, but you could hook up Slack to it. You could hook up WhatsApp. You could hook up any sort of web hook to trigger from like Discord or potentially through other nodes that have triggers that could take in like questions or search queries. We've got it configured with chat model and assistant as a tool. And I'll kind of go into this a little bit in more detail as we get going. Um, but the first thing that we're going to have to do is we actually need an assistant to work with. And so I'm going to hop out to the Pinecone console and um, create an assistant. And so I just click in the console. I'm in the over here on the assistant menu under my assistants, and I have no assistants today. I cleaned up my account yesterday. Um, and I'm going to create my assistant that we're going to work with. This is going to be what we upload our files to, um, and um, and then do the chatting with. And you can see right now this is initializing. I'll just kind of walk through the console really quickly. But with this workflow, you actually don't need to use the console other than to create the assistant. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you can do almost everything you need to do in N8N with that workflow. Um, on the right-hand side here, we just have some like status information. Um, if we were using this assistant in the console, we would add some instructions. This is like your system prompt. Um, we would set the model that we're going to use for chatting. And then we could use this down here in the lower text box. We can actually chat with files that we've uploaded. You can upload files over here, just drag and drop. It accepts PDFs, Word docs, text, JSON, and Markdown. Um, but we're, like I said, we're not going to go through it here. We're actually going to do this all through N8N. I just kind of wanted to walk through this because I think sometimes this gets a little bit confusing. Um, and so I'll leave this on files because we're going to come back and take a look at this here. So we have our assistant created. I am going to make sure that N8N assistant is selected here. This workflow assumes that the assistant is named N8N, so it just automatically selected it for me. Uh, and since I'm starting with a template already, a lot of this is already configured for me, but I just want to point out a couple of things. We connect with a credential. This is pretty typical. You all know how this works if you've been using N8N before. So I've added my API key here, and I did that. I'd already set that up, but you can do that in the Pinecone console here under API keys. You can generate a new one, drop that in here. As I mentioned, we have that pricing promotion going on. So if you start building with this new node before March 31st, you can get a discount when you upgrade to the standard plan. And it is you get a standard free trial for 3 weeks. We have that. That's a normal feature that we have. But we're now offering, in addition to that, $40 per month in credits for 6 months after that trial ends. And so um, that goes through March 31st. Just so everyone knows, I want to make sure people hear that. So I've got my credentials set up. Um, Here we're actually uploading files. So we're going to operate on a file. We're going to upload a file. That's what the operation is that we selected here. We're using Assistant or N8N Assistant. The input data field name, this is when we download the file, the data is actually in that field. And so that's it. That's pretty normal way of dealing with files. And then we also need to, we're going to store an external file ID on Assistant as metadata. We do this so that we can handle this data later on, or manage those files later on if we need to, like if we're going to update it. Um, this update file in Assistant is very similar. I'm not going to go through that one. But what I can do now is I can actually, oh, I got to drop in my files. Wait, turn it on. I'm going to activate it. It's going to fire production executions. And we're actually, I forgot to mention this, but we're going to, I'm going to be uploading our Pinecone release notes from 2022 through today, basically. And so I have these all downloaded as Markdown files. So I'm going to drop those in here. We can see them upload into my Google Drive folder. And then we can see, we should be able to see this kick off. Well, it's not going to kick off yet, but we will be able to, it goes every minute or so, so it'll happen here shortly. Um, but
Right. So
eventually,
the Google Drive
yeah,
node just polls, right?
it
Is that what
pulls. Yep.
happens? Okay, okay.
Yep. Exactly. And I can show that here under file added. It's pulling every minute
Gotcha, gotcha.
and looking in that folder. Um, okay, I just did this earlier, so
It's a
it
very
should work.
long minute.
Yes, a very long. There we
There we
go. Okay,
go.
it's happening. It's happening, folks. So as I mentioned, so now it's running. So if we take a look over here, this is going to start populating with our files. Uh, and while that's running, let's actually go and look at the chat here. I'm going to open up the chat and I'm going to ask, I know that our release note, I happen to know that our release notes have information about this node launch last week. And so I'm
And
going to ask,
I actually have a question maybe before
yeah,
you start
sure.
asking.
Yeah,
Can you explain like the difference between like the different nodes that we have, the different
yeah,
types of nodes here, right? Like there's
yeah,
like a tool node and then there's a
yep,
node and I was when I started with N8N I got very confused around that. So
yeah. Okay, so I'll kind of go through all of them here quickly.
mm,
These file added and file upload nodes, and it's also indicated by the little orange lightning bolt next to it. Those are trigger nodes. So they act when something happens. You could also have a manual trigger. So like if I press the button, it would also trigger it. But these poll every so often and they're looking for data. And so that's the trigger here. You could have a uh, node that does something when a webhook is invoked. These nodes, this is downloading the file from Google Drive so that it can upload it to Assistant. And so this Assistant node is this is just the regular Assistant node. It's not a tool in this case. Again, like there are different operation or file or different resources and operations you can act on here. So we support operating against, like you can list your assistants. I'm actually going to do this outside of just so we can see without messing things up. You can operate on assistants. We could, like we just did here, we uploaded files. You can get um, I'll show you files here. Upload file. There's a few different operations here. You can list all the files that your assistant has, um, update files, delete a file, um, different things that you can. The other main thing that we're going to see in this tool call is actually this context snippet. We can actually get context snippets. And if you think back to our conversation about like chunking your data into these smaller pieces of data, that's what a snippet is. We've automatically chunked it for you, and we call those context snippets. So here, the resources context snippet, and we get the context snippets. I'll show this in the tool here in a second. Um, bef yeah. Okay, so let's make sure our files are uploaded. So we have 5 files here that have been uploaded. We can actually view them in the console here. And this is where we're storing that external file ID that I mentioned earlier so that we can delete and update that file through N8N if we need to. Okay, so the way this part of the workflow is set up, we've got chat input, which we talked about. This Pinecone Assistant node we've set up as a tool. So this is using the context snippet resource, getting context snippets, and you'll see that when it's automatically added as a tool here, or when it's added as a tool here, it automatically defines the query. Um, Based on what the model says. And I'll point that out in just a second here. This source tag, this is just purely for our tracking to see who's using or to see how these templates are being used. So you can ignore that or remove it if you'd like. So let's do a chat here. So I'm asking about what support Pinecone has for N8N. And I will make this bigger while it's running. We can see that the chat came in. It's asking OpenAI for a little bit of information. That information, it changed the OpenAI, the model actually changed the query as well. Passed in Pinecone support for N8N. that's the initial query that was passed in. We do some underneath the covers on Assistant. We also do some query planning to kind of make that a better query. In this case, it might not have actually happened. Um, and then we get back these snippets based off of that query. So it's looking for support for N8N. Um, and there should be, I think, 16 snippets that come back here. I'm not going to count them all. But that data, that authoritative data from our assistant knowledge base gets passed into the model as this next step here. And we can see that as we scroll down. Um, and then it generates output. And so the output in this chat box is essentially what you're seeing here in that last step. And so we can see that support was added for this node and a little bit more information about it. And we can continue chatting, but I want to make sure that we get time to um, talk to our guests. So, Roie, any last questions here?
Nope, I think that does it. I
Okay.
really want to save time for our guests to
Yeah.
talk about their
Yep.
work.
Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing and Amal, will have you hop on.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Great to
You're very blurry right
Yeah,
now.
you look like a big
like
blur.
We'll let you get that ironed out. I'm just catching up on chat. There's lots happening.
let's fix that issue of the camera just a second.
Um,
If I
There we
there
go.
because
we go.
from here it looks good,
Perfect.
but I think I have a better camera than that one. This one.
There we go.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for joining us today. This is Aemal Sayer. Do you want to maybe just tell us a little bit about who you are and like what you do and what you're working on, just to get going so people have a little bit of context?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aemal Sayer. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Avanai. Avanai is a multinational company. It's a consulting firm, n8n partner. We have execution in the US and Europe. We are helping big organizations, really like 20, 30,000 plus employees organizations to adopt AI, mainly AI agents, AI automation. Obviously, RAG is in the core center of it. Almost every single client of ours do have a requirement for putting their knowledge base, whether this be for user onboarding or HR related questions. Like you can imagine like a big company like Allianz or
Hmm.
Bayer or these big companies with hundreds of thousands of employees, they have a lot of content laying around, and it's Pinecone is the best solution, and therefore I was super excited when I was invited. Besides being the CTO of Avanai, I'm also an n8n ambassador, which means I am kind of like the brand ambassador of n8n.
Yeah.
I teach n8n around the world, and the numbers are staggering. In the past 8, 9 months, I taught to 8,000 people, 3,000 of them in person, 5,000 online. This is excluding the people who watched my YouTube videos on my YouTube channel. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
humbled to be a part of this group.
Yeah. I'm excited to have you here as well. Thank you for that. So tell me a little bit about like what brought you to N8N and like your background is in I think you said software engineering and you've been, writing code from scratch probably like I have for a long time and now like we have other ways of building. And so like what brought you to this part of automation and to N8N?
Yeah, I have been coding for 24 years, nonstop. Not that I coded 24 years ago and now
Yeah.
I code again, but nonstop, always at the cutting edge. And in 2023, when I started a voice AI agent company, I was building it and I discovered n8n and I started building really deeply the entire orchestration layer of my voice AI agent um, with n8n, and I realized that, oh my God, this world is changing. In the past 3 years, I've been intensively not only learning the frontier technologies with automation, low code, no code, n8n, and everything new with AI, like AI assisted development, but also teaching it. Like on the one side, I was doing it and implementing it to my clients. On the other side, I was teaching the world and community-driven approach. So I give this metaphor of two CTOs or a CTO and a VP of engineering talking to each other. They don't talk anymore with like when two CTOs talk to each other, they don't talk with code. They go on a whiteboard, they draw boxes, they draw arrows. And that's exactly what we're doing with N8n and with this new.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
only thing is like on the other side, it's not the CTO, it's an AI.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. They can't talk back as much, or maybe they can.
The time will
Um,
come.
tell me about like kind of how you came across Pinecone and like how that has played with other tools and like shown up in your work.
If I may share my screen and
Yeah, yeah.
so I uh, discovered Pinecone a couple of years ago, but intensively when I was looking for, I'm doing this N8n podcast setup. That this is an N8n podcast I ran a couple of months ago, where I used the N8n Pinecone Assistant. At the time, there was no Node. So this was a time when I got into this and I was like, wow, this is so cool, because I used ChatGPT Assistant before, where it has some limitations and so on. And then I realized that using Pinecone Assistant, and this is like a hour, 23 minutes long video. If you guys want to kind of
I
anyone
watched it,
wants
by
to
the
watch.
way. It's great.
Oh yeah, cool. So here I was like explaining all possible ways of doing RAG, and then why does it make sense to go with this assistant API? And what I built there is something like this. And here it's using the HTTP request node. And you can see this was the old school way of doing Pinecone Assistant.
Mhm.
And then when it comes to kind of like connecting your AI agent to the Pinecone Assistant, I used to do it like this, like having an MCP server, having a streamable. It's not as intuitive as you showed it in your demo. But now that this Pinecone Assistant is becoming so cool that you have like literally an actual node that you can natively,
Yeah.
the way N8n is doing it, you're doing it, it makes RAG so cool. The reason it makes it so cool is because, go ahead. You
I
want
just
to?
gonna say, can you actually go back to the screen with the HTTP? Because
Yes.
and open up one of those. No, either one is fine.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, like, to use it using this approach, you have to know the you have to know the URL here.
Yes.
You have to, copying and pasting is great, but you have to know where to find it. You got to put it in here. You got to manage it, especially if like your assistant name change it. Like if you want to use a different assistant, you have to like actually
Exactly.
change the URL. Uh,
Exactly.
and same thing with like you actually have to set up two credentials too. In addition, like you set this one up here, and then you also have to set up the one with the bearer auth for the MCP
Yeah.
server.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a few more steps that you have to go through.
Exactly.
So yeah, go back to continue on.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is like, what? Let's zoom out and ask this question like, why would I use Assistant? Why not the store? Why not, let's say, a vector database like PG Vector or Clotron and so on? The reason is very simple. Like, let's assume that 3D vector space and having all those little, what do you call it? Those little vectors sitting all in these places, the data. So when you are picking some similarity search in the vector space, the um, the circle that you pick the similarity from, the chunking in the circle, that is the AV lifting of data science. And we don't want to do data science. We don't want to kind of like the way you drag and drop or
Mhm.
your N8n workflows were uploading. If this circle is too big or too small, if it's too big, it's going to bring the retrieval will happen and it's going to bring you irrelevant data. If it's too small, it can't find the answer. That by itself is an art of like finding the right chunking size, the right overlapping of the chunks. I have a data science background. I did my master's in data science 10 years ago, but that by itself is too much technical. And if you want to do it really, really nice and not get involved too much in the details, that is the thing. Like you don't see that much of kind of technicalities in there. You kind of go in that abstracted layer, drag and drop everything. You build a highly accurate RAG pipeline with minimal efforts, which is kind of the notion of this entire n8n movement in the first place. Like, we don't want to code anymore. We want to drag and drop boxes, arrows, and then we want to build products. And also with this combined with AI coding, aka vibe coding, it's the new norm of building products. So therefore, I'm really fascinated when I see these kind of updates coming along. And when Jenna, you
Yeah.
reached out, if I can show this, I was super excited about this
Yeah.
portal.
Yeah. I'm glad you were able to show it. Yeah, when we were talking earlier on, I think like, um, oh, I lost my train of thought. When we were talking, when we were talking just earlier, with Roie earlier, like one of the things is like being able to, you can drop this node in, but also you can, potentially do more, have more of these assistants that you can interact with, as opposed to, just having one very simple RAG pipeline.
Absolutely.
Roie,
I
did
mean,
you have something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, first of all, this looks really cool. And it's very nice to see how like, the drop-in replacement for like the Pinecone Assistant node with like that HTTP node before is just like kind of transparent. Um, but like yeah, like Jenna said, it's what I would be fascinated to see is like where you go and take it further. You know what I mean? Like even like the idea of like using more than one assistant, right? Like, and I think that like you hit the nail on the head when you said like there are things you want to care about and things you don't want to care about, right? Like, and the things you don't want to care about, you don't just want to care about them because you're lazy, right? Like you don't want to care about them because they represent mental load, right? So like when you are trying to build something, right, you only have so much mental capacity to spend, right, before your brain gets tired, before communication with team members gets too complicated, right? And when you abstract these things again into these just a box, you know what I mean? It's just a box that does RAG, right? Then you don't have to think about the details. And honestly, like we as Pinecone, we're basically telling you, the consumer, hey, don't worry about it. We are the experts. Like we know how to deal with chunking. We know how to deal with query optimization. We know how to deal with re-ranking. So if you have a problem with how these things are working, you don't have to go and fix it yourself, right? You can come to us and we will work with you to fix those things, right?
yeah.
And that's like a fundamental kind of like just separation of concerns, right? That I think changes the game a little bit. Again, taking the onus away from the consumer and puts it on us, right? To deliver like exactly what you're looking for.
And look at it from the multi-AI agent architecture perspective. So if you have like a boss AI agent that has like subordinates having like specific skills, those specific AI agents need specific RAG. Each of them will be one of the assistants. So the architecture of Pinecone lays down very nicely and neatly in that metaphor, because then you have like multiple RAG pipelines literally built by drag and dropping things and with very high accuracy, which by itself is a full-fledged science
Yeah.
behind it.
Yep, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, I want to make sure we get to talk with Maddy a little bit before we do Q&A. How can people find you online? Like, what is the best way?
So the best way you can find me online from the social side is aemalsayer.com,
Okay.
and from the business side is avanai.io.
Okay.
Emil, thank you so
Uh,
much.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I will have you turn your video off and Maddy, come on. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for hanging out with us. Um,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Maddie is one of our Pinecone pioneer. Actually, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I just want to say one of our Pinecone pioneers and has been like talking about N8N and Pinecone for a while now. And so, yeah, thank you for joining us. Let us, yeah,
Uh,
tell me who you are and what you're working on.
Totally. Yes, I feel like I'm the perfect foil to Amal because it's like I would
Yeah,
describe myself as a technical marketer, but not a developer per se.
yeah,
Um, So I currently work for DigitalOcean as a senior content marketing manager, and it's really that like content piece that brought me to RAG because I wanted to find a way to use AI in my workflows, but also be able to ground the results in reality. And so a lot of what I've been building with Pinecone in tools like N8N is really to try to create that ideal end result. And RAG has been like the perfect way to do that. And so yeah, I mean, I think the reason that you reached out to me was because I've been working on this project for a client where I built him an N8N workflow, and it has a couple of different components, but really at the center of it is this like Pinecone RAG pipeline and then like retrieval component. And yeah, it's just been interesting to kind of compare, like looking back at those workflows and how I built them before this community node was available, and now seeing kind of like the more simplified and abstracted version, and
Mhm.
just seeing like, it probably would have saved me a lot of time to do it this way. And now that I know, like I'm excited to use it moving forward.
Yes, yes. What, tell me a little bit about like how you got, like, what brought you
Mhm.
to N8N originally? Like, how did you get into that
Sure.
and making part of it?
Totally. Yeah. So I'm not a developer, but I have a little bit of web design development experience from
Yeah.
the past. And so when vibe coding became a thing, I was really excited because it's like I kind of have like the language, and to be able to use these tools and like get to that ideal end result. What I was missing was really like the, software knowledge and just like, yeah, knowing different languages and architecture and putting it all together. And so I think that's kind of what brought me here. It was
Mhm.
this idea of wanting to build with AI, use AI to build out like tools and processes that I could use for my content purposes, or, just like within the work that I do. And so I actually had originally built something on Zapier agents, and it interfaced with Pinecone through some like complicated API call thing. And then I moved to N8N because I wanted to have a little bit more control, I think, over the different steps and like the end result. And it just seemed like it was kind of a better fit for N8N. So when this client came to me and basically asked me to rebuild this thing that I had originally created on Zapier agents, that's what brought me to then using
Okay.
Pinecone on N8N.
Okay. Okay. And how, tell me a little bit about kind of what that process of using Pinecone on N8N looked like before,
Sure.
and maybe do a little bit of comparison. I know we don't like we kind of saw a little bit with Aemal, but
Sure.
visually, but like t tell us a little bit about like your experience and maybe what was challenging or what was easy, and then like maybe what how it's going now.
Totally. Yeah. So like I'm looking at one of the workflows that I built for this client, and it's like, there's basically like two N8N workflows that I'm thinking about right now that work together. One of them is the one that chunks, the relevant content and embeds it. And then the other
Mm.
one is like the retrieval component. So they're two workflows. They work together. And I'm just like looking at how I built it on N8N, and it's like I left the client a ton of notes on N8N, like, the chunking has to be this way in order for the retrieval to work. And like, it's like you have to have it set up this way or else it's going to break or it's not going to work as expected. So I think
Mhm.
just little things like that, and I think that's like part of the point of creating this node is so that it's a little bit more intuitive, so that like I don't have to make that decision. He doesn't have to follow that if he
Yeah.
wanted to change anything. And then I think the other thing that really stands out to me is like the process of feeding the chat model that you're trying to get the context from. It was a little disparate in that, it's like I'm trying to retrieve that information, and then there was like a code step in order to translate it, and then
Sure.
it went to like the message model or like the AI agent step. But
Mhm.
now like how it has that context subnode, I guess you'd call it,
Yeah.
that works with Pinecone, so that it's like it's kind of all together, and like now I'm not as worried too that like the code step's going to maybe break it, because that's something that I think about in terms of building these workflows for clients. It's like the more components you add, the more likely that something could break in the future. And the more that
Mhm.
they're designed to work together, the more sort of like bulletproof the workflow is.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. I think as you're talking, I just wrote down a note for myself, like um even like in my software development background, like the more integration points you have, the more places that things can go wrong. And I think that like the same thing holds true here, where the more nodes you have, the more configuration you have in those nodes, um the more places, the more chances are that things can go wrong. And so I think
Totally.
the more simpler we can keep it, the better it will be. What before we wrap up, is there anything that like you're curious about like exploring next with this node or trying out beyond what you have been doing with this client?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think with RAG, it's like there are a lot of examples in certain sort of standout industries, like chatbots and customer service come to mind. Just like different ways of working with knowledge bases and things like that. I feel like there's not a lot of direction from other people who have been trying it out like within the content space and kind of like
Yeah.
my specific use case of like wanting to ground things in reality, wanting to use, a company's sort of body of work, their blog
Mhm.
content, but maybe also like their solutions pages, maybe some of their documentation and things
Yeah.
like that. And so I think like part of what I want to do is like figure out what those best use cases are and how to implement them, but also
Mhm.
like hopefully encourage other people to
Yeah.
try those things too, because I feel like with all these like developing AI technologies and how you can implement them and how you can build with them, like I definitely learn best by seeing what other people are
Yeah. Yeah.
doing.
I think like for me, that has like seeing all the workflow templates that people have built and have published, like that is very inspiring to me. So like if
Totally.
y'all have any interesting ones that you want to share, I would love to uh see them, even if they're not using Pinecone. Like I this is very
Absolutely.
fascinating for me. So um, okay. One last question before we do Q&A.
Sure.
How can people find you online?
Absolutely. I will drop it in the chat. I would say LinkedIn is probably the best right now. It either says Maddie Osmond or Maddie French. Sometimes I can't decide, but that's
Yeah.
me.
Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us. Amal, do you want to hop back on video and we can we've got a couple questions here. And I don't know who they're directed at yet, but uh let's see. Just wondering how people are getting clients for this kind of thing. There doesn't seem to be many N8N jobs around. I have the technical skills to build this stuff, but finding pain points and sellable workflows is very tough. Have either of you dealt with that? This is a very interesting question, I think. I've also wondered how people are doing this.
Yeah, Amal, you want to take it first and then I can chime in?
Um, to be honest, that's $1 million question. It's the business question, not the technical question. We techies love to build, but when it comes to sales, we say like somebody else do the sales. But my 2 cents would be like try to be as visible online as possible by creating a lot of workflows. Go with this mentality of give first. So create a lot of anything
Yeah.
workflows, put it on a template, submit it for the approval for template. So that increases your profile visibility on the anything world. Generate a lot of content on LinkedIn, create really valuable information. Not that you copy paste a lot of nodes on a canvas that's like that big, which is a very bad idea to put so many nodes on one canvas, and put some clickbait so that people can start following you, but actually deliver the value, like literally send the JSON file so people can install it on their workflows and they can get some benefits so that they can remember you. And then later on, you can sell your products to them. So that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think my answer is very similar. And in this case, it's like the workflow that I've been talking about. I wasn't necessarily looking for clients. I'm definitely interested in building with AI, and I see working with clients as like a way to further that knowledge. And so I had shared a video on YouTube about this Zapier agents workflow. And the client reached out and said, I'm looking for the same thing for my business and my clients. And again, I like made the decision to switch it over to N8N based on kind of what we talked about and how it was going to evolve and change since that initial share. But, same thing, Jenna, I think you reached out because I have been posting about it on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. And I'm part of the Pinecone Pioneers. So, just, that like I've been playing around with Pinecone and RAG and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it comes down to content and just like sharing what you're doing. And I think the foundation of all of that is like building and experimenting because you can't sell something that you're not confident in. So you have to like kind of get your hands dirty first, I think, before you want to go after clients.
Yeah. I will just add like one of my secret goals of this webinar is to kind of bring these two communities together, the N8N and Pinecone community. I personally have benefited from the general tech community like hugely in my career, and I know just in talking with both Aemal and Maddy before this, they have as well. And so Aemal mentioned give back, give first. I think like that is super important to kind of being a part of the community and also like
Totally.
getting something out of it. Like if you're not doing that, you're probably not going to get anything out of it. So, oh,
100%.
okay. In terms of pricing plan, is there any limit to how many assistants we can create? Yes, that is a great question. On the starter plan, which is the free tier, we allow, I believe it's five assistants, and I think it's like 100 files per assistant. We actually just bumped that up so that people could get started a little bit easier. But on the free tier, yeah, it's five. And then, wait, I'm not looking at the right spot. Five assistants. And then on the paid plans, it's unlimited. So I can drop more info in here in like pricing info and limits into chat. I did just a little bit earlier, dropped a few other links. One of those links is the link to that pricing promotion that I mentioned earlier. Um, so please take a look at those. From Niall, I'm putting workflows on LinkedIn, but not getting much traction. Where to add these workflows? So I think one and if either of you have done this, like you can chime in here too. But we signed up as a creator on the N8N site and have been publishing them there. They go through a vetting process. So when you submit one, someone on the N8N side reviews it, make sure it's like not doing things it shouldn't be doing, and make sure it's going to be valuable to the community. So I think that's one place. I know as I was kind of doing my own searching, there's a lot of GitHub repos out that just
Hmm.
like like there's probably one called Awesome N8N templates out there. I'm guessing there is one, but there's a lot of repos out there that kind of collect them all as well.
Jenny, I have a question about this pricing, previous
Yeah.
question. This enterprise license, I see it's $500 per month, and then there onwards, then it's based on usage. But is there any package? Because I know Pinecone, it's really, really scalable. It could like literally be a nice product for big organizations. Is there any like enterprise, like custom pricing, really big or like self-hosting and things like that in the pipeline or sometimes coming in the Pinecone roadmap?
That is a great question. We're always taking feedback on that. I know that we do work with enterprise customers to do like annual contracts, and I don't know exactly how that works. But if you find yourself in that situation, I would definitely reach out to our sales team. Actually, they might reach out to you before that if they see that you're like trending that way, to talk about like how that would be a better better option for you. Roie, I don't know if you have other information beyond what I just said.
No, I don't, but I do know that like again, assistant is meant for primarily the enterprise user, right? Like that's like our target
Mhm.
audience, right? What we're seeing now is I think in general enterprise kind of lags behind, cutting edge use cases uh
Mhm.
by about like between 3 to 5 years, right? Like in general, right? We are seeing a lot of use cases where enterprises are kind of like, what can I do with this, right? And they're kind of catching up to RAG in general. I think
Mhm.
again, like this is like the next step, right? So like I would compare like just like the way that retrieval is advancing to just maybe AI coding is kind of like a good example. So like people started with like, hey, I can do tab completions and that's awesome. And then now people are just like, "Ugh, I'm just building features left and right with like not looking at my code even, right? And it took a while for bigger companies to sort of like get with it. Um, but eventually they catch up, right? And I think right now, like they're catching up to like the idea of like, hey, like maybe like we should really implement and integrate with like all of these like AI coding tools. Same with retrieval, I think, right? So like I think that they started
Mhm.
understanding the value of RAG in general and how they would work mostly internally for internal solutions, but now they're starting to build outward facing solutions for customers as well. And I think that assistant being like kind of the next paradigm, like we said, right, like you're looking at it as a primitive as opposed to like a full-fledged pipeline that you have to maintain, right? That's coming up, right? So we're seeing that budding, right? But like as we move forward, that will increase more and more. But that is our target audience here.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just there's another question in here that I'm not going to answer it live, but I typed in an answer. It's about the vector database node. I think that it's just as a limitation of the node for the person that was asking, but we can confirm that. Any last minute questions before we wrap up? I want to make sure that we are getting everything answered. It looks like we did. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, I'm going to drop all of the links in chat again if you want to grab any of them. We'd love to see what you built. Feel free to reach out. I'm like, you can reach out to any of us, but you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or through email. My email is jenna@pinecone.io. Um, yeah, I'd love to see, personally, I'd love to see what people are building. Like it's one of my favorite things about my job is like seeing people build things and then like getting to talk to them about it and the decisions they made. So, I think that's it. I
All
thank
right.
you, everyone,
Thanks
Thank
so
you so
for
much.
much.
joining.
Thanks
All
Yes.
for
right.
having us.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right.
See you
Thank
later.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.